This example of James Bassantin, or, as the book is in French, more correctly, Jacques Bassantin's Astronomique Discourse of 1557, comes from the library of Mary, Queen of Scots. Mary would have been 14 at the time the book was printed, when both Mary and Bassantin were in France. We know that the book belonged to the young queen because it bears the crowned initial M on both the upper and lower boards. On close inspection, we can see that this device is off kilter. It isn't centered on the board or within the other decorative devices. This act of clumsiness, surprising in a book intended for royalty, indicates that perhaps the binder completed the work on a Friday afternoon or after a particularly good Lyonnaise lunch, or that the device was added after the book was bound. It's tempting to conclude that, just maybe, the book was actually chosen by the young queen as part of her studies.
Indeed, it is well known that the queen was remarkably well read. She had a large library of several hundreds of titles that she brought back to Scotland on her return from France in 1561. It is said that she had some 480 printed books. This at a time when, by way of comparison, the Bodleian Library in Oxford has only 2,500 works. It's now got something in the range of 14 million.
So it's safe to say she was something of a bibliophile. Indeed, if Mary wasn't well read at 14 years old, she certainly would have been later in life after she spent 19 years in prison. Once Mary returned to Scotland, the books were located at the Royal Palace of Holyrood and at Edinburgh Castle. This copy of Bassantin is mentioned in the inventory of Holyrood Library made on November the 25th, 1569, after the Queen had abdicated.
This inventory lists 87 books from the library of the Royal Palace of Holyrood that were supposed to be given to Mary's half-brother, the new regent, James Stuart, who was going to be killed soon after. In this catalogue, made by the regent's secretary, John Wood of Tullidavy, the Bassantin is listed as item number 4.
The next time the book's mentioned, it's in the library of Mary's son, James Charles Stuart, King of Scotland as James VI, from 24th of July 1567, and King of England and Ireland as James I, from the union of the Scottish and English crowns on the 24th of March 1603, through to his death until 1625, making it what must be one of a very small number of books that have been in the royal libraries of 2 excellent countries. This second document mentioning the Bassantin was drafted by Peter Young, the tutor and librarian of young King James. It is a list of 149 books present in the fortified castle of Edinburgh. According to Charlemagne in his Scottish Notes and Queries, the book had been moved from Holyrood to Edinburgh for the sake of protection, being of a kind that in turbulent age of intolerance and unreason would be in far safer keeping behind the fire of Kirkcaldy's guns.
The book next appears in the library of the Stanhopes, Earls of Chesterfield, Bretby Hall, Bretby, Derbyshire, and in the catalogue of their library, it is described as having a crowned M on the sides. It was sold by the Stanhopes as part of the Chesterfield Carnarvon Library sale at Sotheby's from the 8th to the 11th of April in 1919.
The main purpose of the work is to act as a compendium on calculating planetary positions. It's a not very well disguised descendant of Peter Appian's famous Astronomicum Caesarum of 1540. It includes some 175 woodcuts and a total of 14 volvels, here complete with all 36 moving parts. The discs of these paper instruments perform many functions conventionally associated with an astrolabe, such as simulating the movement of the planets, reckoning time, and assisting with practical matters of surveying and astrology. Bassantin cut no corners in producing the Astronomique Discourse. The size of this volume and the extent of its illustration and ornamentation make this an unusually fine example of the attention given to printing of scientific works of this period. One of the best bits about working as a bookseller is that we get to learn something new every day. I've inspected several examples of the Astronomique Discourse over the years, and so when we look through this example, I immediately spotted something different about it. The end caps of the volvels seemed unusually Spartan and different from any example we'd seen before. When I checked the images of earlier previous examples, sure enough, all the other copies seemed to have an extra ring on the end caps on the volvels. Worried that this copy was missing some of the original printed parts, I investigated further. I needn't have worried. Mary's book was indeed complete. It turned out that all of the other examples that I'd seen had the rings drawn in manuscript. Something I'd never noticed before, but it means that every copy that's out there it shows something about the attention to detail that the people putting the book together made in order to get things exactly how they wanted them.
The text of the Astronomique Discourse is arranged in several treatises of increasing complexity, beginning with information about understanding sine tables and trigonometry. moving to the application of these principles to the terrestrial and celestial spheres, and to the interaction of planets, and closing with a lengthy section concerning practical problems of the heavens. The majority of the work's volvelles are contained here. While Bassantin gives the readers much information in textual and tabular formats, his illustrations provide the bulk of the didactic force and do so without sacrificing beauty. For example, its armillary sphere supported on the back of Atlas, its Hampson volvelle of the constellations of the northern hemisphere, the glowing moon phases in discussion of the eclipse, the fine metalwork form of its paper instruments. The author, James Bassantin, studied at the University of Glasgow and seems to have taken pride in his Scottish heritage, even as his work took him to the continent. For example, he prominently identifies himself as Escossois in this work's title page and lists 8 Scottish towns in his tables of longitude and latitude.
Bassantin eventually settled in France, a tutor of mathematics, first at Lyon and later at Paris. He returned to Scotland shortly after Mary in 1562, and en route discussed with Sir Robert Melville the current political tensions of the Isles, predicting that there would be at length captivity and utter wreck for young Queen Mary at the hands of Elizabeth, and that the Kingdom of England would eventually fall to the Crown of Scotland.